So events in the world have all kinds of people distraught, elated, disappointed, angry, all these different. And meditators, mindfulness meditators, if they just note feeling angry or feeling disappointed or feeling depressed or feeling elated or whatever, can escape being manipulated by events in the world. You know, if you want to be a happy person, then you don't want to get angry when the election doesn't go your way or something, or depressed because, about the war in Gaza or whatever is going on in the world. If you want to be happy, you just be mindful, and then you won't get dragged into uncomfortable moods, temperaments, and things. And I mean, the election, the war in Gaza or Israel or whatever it is, are just ideas. They're concepts. And we don't want to be triggered by those things. I mean, it's okay. You can have compassion for the Palestinians or, a little bit of that or something. But to get all embroiled and hating the governments that support it and all that kind of stuff. The world is going to keep doing terrible things. Always has, always will. And as meditators, we're trying to not get our minds dragged around by external events or internal events either. Anyway, so mindfulness turns that off. I woke up at 9 o'clock and then the election results were in, and oh no, I went to bed at 9 o'clock and I woke up at 4 to go to the bathroom. And so I looked at my phone and I said, oh, election results. And I went back to bed and I had to meditate pretty hard, pretty strenuously for a while. And then I slept another 4 hours or something like that. If you just have a reactive mind and you get up at 4 o'clock and you hear that something went the way you didn't want it to, you probably couldn't sleep again that night. Your mind would be running wild, So that's the wonderful thing about mindfulness. And the other thing that Jim and I were discussing today, actually, we were talking about how when you're noting stuff, mental, physical stuff, what you're noting has already happened. But the note is as close to the present, is as close to now as you can get. the note comes after whatever you're noting. But the note is, like I say, I think it might be in the present, but if it isn't, it's as close as you can get to the present. Anyway, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to say this one more time, and I know I'm preaching to the choir to a large extent, but the Buddha discovered mindfulness 2,500 years ago. And when he discovered it, he used it. He wasn't the Buddha yet. He discovered mindfulness and used it to become the Buddha. That's what liberated him, was mindfulness. And so he's the inventor, the originator, the discoverer. And then he taught the mindfulness in the Satipatthana Sutta and the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. And he says very clearly at the beginning, this is the only way for the purification of beings, for overcoming sorrow and grief and lamentation, for coming to the right path, for the attainment of Nibbana. This is the only way. And then he explains how it's done. And he starts out by talking about mindfulness of breathing. And he says, mindful he breathes in and mindful he breathes out. He, thinking, I breathe in, thinking, I breathe in, breathes in. Then he goes to body postures. When he didn't say, when he breathes in, he knows he breathes in. He didn't say that. He said, when he breathes in, thinking I breathe in, that's noting, he breathes in. When he walks, he knows I am walking. He didn't say when he walks, he knows he's walking. That would be different. When he walks, he knows I am walking. That's noting. It's also called vitaka, applied thought. And then he goes to the 32 parts of the body and he reflects this body thinking. This body is made up of hair of the head, hair of the body, teeth, skin, nails. He's thinking that. How else? Then he goes to the cemetery meditations. Well, when you sit and there's a corpse in front of you, you don't just look at it and concentrate on it. And the instructions are, he reflects, meaning thinks, this is the destiny of my body also. That's applied thought. Any meditation, if you do loving kindness meditation, there is applied thought. you sit there repeating, may I be happy and healthy. Then you go on to, may my mother be happy and healthy, and may my friends be. And it's thinking, it's applied thought, vitaka and vichara, applied and sustained thought. If you do kasina meditation, if you're doing a fire kasina, the instructions are that you repeat mentally fire, 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 fire. You don't just sit there and look at fire. You repeat mentally. Every meditation is that way. Involves applied and sustained thought. Anyway, and then Mahasi says, for particular attention, it may be mentioned that the words rising and falling should not be uttered by mouth, but repeated by saying mentally. In fact, words are not of real significance. To know the actual movements of the abdomen and the feeling of sensations that arise in the body is of fundamental importance. If the contemplation is carried on by the simple act of mental observation without the act of mentally repeating the words, the contemplation will be casual and ineffective, with many drawbacks, such as failing of attention to reach closely enough to the object to which it is directed, failing to clearly distinguish and perceive the phenomena part by part, respectively, and the deterioration of the necessary force of energy to contemplate. That's another fault, is that there's a deterioration of the necessary fault of energy to contemplate. Therefore, it is directed to contemplate by repeating the words mentally, as stated earlier. As stated earlier in the book, but as stated earlier, like 2,500 years earlier, by the Buddha. And he invented it. So if someone says they're teaching mindfulness and they don't teach noting, they're not teaching the Buddha's discovery. It's his teaching. If you change it, you're not teaching his teaching. Anyway, Reverend Pamasuri made this point a number of times, that just attention, if you're looking really hard at or observing really hard the rising and falling of the abdomen, but you're not noting it, you're not being mindful. You're just being attentive. You're paying attention. A jeweler who takes a rough diamond and cuts it into a, faceted stone, he's sitting with magnifying glasses and everything, looking at this little tiny thing and using power tools and stuff to cut facets on it. Well, he's paying attention. You better believe he's concentrating and paying attention, but he's not being mindful. The applied thought isn't there. You don't need it if you're cutting a diamond, because you're not trying to gain wisdom. You're just trying to cut a diamond. But if you're a mindfulness meditator and you're trying to gain wisdom, then it's the applied thought, which is noting, naming what you're doing, is absolutely crucial. If Otherwise, if it didn't have that factor, it would just be simple attention. And the one thing people don't like about mindfulness meditation is noting. And it clutters, it gets in the way. It's like, oh, you've decided it clutters and it gets in the way. The Buddha thought it was the right thing to do. And it made a Buddha out of him, and arahants and other attainments out of thousands, if not millions, of people and devas and everything, you know? So it's designed for coming to the right path and the realization of nirvana. And if it seems a little cluttered to you, that's that's okay, but it won't work if you don't do it. Anyway.
You know, David, of all the times we've heard you say that, I'm sure, and I've heard you say that,
Many times.
that was the best explanation. I actually probably only understood it for the first time just now.
Oh my gosh.